Right, I think it's 7 o'clock. I believe we're all good to go. So good evening and welcome. I don't sound a bit like Bruce Forsyth when I say that, but anyway. So can we have apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies from Councillor Ashbury, Councillor MacDonald and Councillor Mulvagnam. Councillor Wilson is here subbing for Councillor Ashbury. That's Alan Ashbury, I should say. And Councillor Glowett is subbing for Councillor MacDonald.
Good, okay. Welcome to the substitutes in particular. Hope you have a jolly time tonight. Good.
Interrupt, please. The chamber appears to be on mute. We can't hear.
Okay. Helen, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Sorry about that. You didn't miss much. A couple of lame jokes from me, but that was about it. You might like to just repeat the apologies for the record.
Okay. Just for those on Zoom, apologies have been received from Councillor Wilson, Councillor Ashbury, Councillor MacDonald and Councillor Mulvagnam, and Councillor Glowett is substituting for Councillor MacDonald and Councillor Wilson is subbing for Councillor Alan Ashbury.
Good, thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting. Does anybody have any burning issues arising out of that, or are you happy for me to sign them off? Good, thank you. Okay. I'm going to do it afterwards, it would seem. So there we are. Good. Declarations of interest. Anybody got any declarations of interest they wish to make at this point? No? Good, thank you. Okay, so we now get to the meat of the meeting, as it were, which is we're going to start off with the people strategy, which I believe you're going to deal with, Ms. Gibbing.
Thank you, Chair. That's really kind of you. The Council faces a challenging time over the next few years in relation to their workforce. There are many reasons for this, primarily reasons such as the employment market is very buoyant. Local government, as you all know, is generally feeling financial pressures, and this is well documented in the media. Local government professions have fallen out of favour with those entering the workforce, and our workforce is ageing and will reach retirement age primarily in the next 5 to 10 years. This adds to health pressures being faced in the workforce, especially in relation to mental health, and we've seen a great increase in this alongside other employers since the pandemic. Surrey Heath Borough Council is very fortunate in that it has excellent relationships within the workforce, demonstrated by the recent staff survey results, which I have to say are unprecedented in my HR career in terms of the level of engagement. However, this has not happened by luck or good fortune. This has happened as the result of very hard work put in by the staff representatives, the senior officers, the line managers, and the HR and organisational development teams. They have spent the last few years building and improving employee relationships within a culture of delivery, strong and supportive values, which is regularly examined and monitored and has project work to continue to improve upon it. The people strategy you see before you is the next step on this important journey of improvement. It gives us a framework to build upon and focus our energy and effort. It is an essential tool to improve recruitment and retention and thereby improve the performance of the council and improve workforce resilience, which we regard as the 3 most important areas for us to enable the council to deliver its vision and services over the next few years. We aim to retain, attract and develop talented officers into the organisation by ensuring that our benefits, our values and our approach are aimed at the things that matter to them. This will ensure that organisational performance continues to improve through the quality of the work that our officers do. We have already had some feedback from committee members, and I'd just like to thank those people who have already contacted me, and I wanted to address those points up front. There will be a detailed action plan developed to address the key challenges within the strategy, including succession planning and talent management, as outlined on page 26 of the strategy. This action plan will form the agenda for our Workforce for the Future board, which I chair, and will be brought back to the Employment Committee for review on an annual basis. We have had a question relating to the cost of anxiety, stress and depression for the organisation, and I can confirm the following for the committee. Over the 22-23 data period for the People Strategy, a total of 25 staff took time off due to the above medical conditions for work and non-work related issues. We lost, as an organisation, a total number of days of 579, or that amounted to 4,576 hours. The total cost to the council was £128,602. Of those cases, 11 reported that the primary cause of their condition was work-related stress, which resulted in 157 days lost and cost £48,996. 14 people reported personal reasons for their condition. This resulted in 422 days lost and cost £79,606. There is a reference in the strategy that says Surrey Heath is fortunate that it is in the good financial position of having reserves, and a question arose whether that comment needed to be changed. Whilst it is very true that we are fortunate that we have reserves, I agree that given the current context, the statement does not sufficiently reflect the priority to balance the budget. I would therefore suggest that the following sentence is used for the committee's consideration: that the council's priority is to develop a financially sustainable medium-term budget, and considerable work is currently underway to stabilise the finance workforce in order to support that requirement. I'm very happy to take any questions or feedback at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Does anybody have any issues, questions that they wish to raise at this point? Please. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. If we can go through them, I think on a page-by-page basis. Actually, one of them has just been addressed by you in terms of, where are we? Optimism for the future. So I'll sort of come on to that. So it's difficult with paging. It's page 13 of our committee papers, which is in the introduction, and where we talk about positive results with with considerable evidence to support. I just wondered if we could make reference to that evidence. I appreciate you talk about the strong and positive culture and the peer challenge, but I just wondered if it would be worthwhile making further reference to the evidence and where that comes from, so that it is evidence-based and not just a statement. Going on, it says that, where is it? Positive the delivery of services and outcomes. And I just would be interested to know if, following the statement by the leader of the council recently about the impending financial or the negative financial impact or position of the council, whether or not there had been any impact or reaction from staff as a result of that statement, to the best of your knowledge. So that's a question which I'm happy to park and happy for you to come back on separately if you don't have an answer to that. But I just wondered if, as a result of that, there had been any feelings of stress or any resignations as a result of that statement. So that's the challenges that can be met bit. Then moving on to page 14. So the takeaway is the evidence base. I appreciate it's a request that's included. And then on page 14, we need to close the bracket somewhere. It's a small point, but we open a bracket as such as increased productivity, blah, de, blah, de, blah, and it doesn't close again. So I think, if possible, if we could do that. I've got highlighted points, but I haven't put the reason why I've highlighted them, so I will... Okay, I've got another one. Oh, so the next one, if we move on to page 21, I'm just checking I'm still on the right. Sorry, page 20, just checking I'm still on the right. Yeah, employer band and value proposition. Am I still in the right policy? Or have I moved on? Marvellous, thank you. I just wondered how many, we talk about benefits and retention, and I just wondered how many people contributed to it and what percentage or numbers, and if the numbers, what percentage of the workforce took part in the staff focus groups. And then I also, one of the things around the importance of, the very important is the Christmas. First one is pension. And I've just put a note there that given that pension contributions are so important to our workforce, which given the age of the workforce that you've just highlighted to us isn't surprising, I just wondered how we were specifically attracting younger people to our workplace. And also whether or not that result is reflective of the age group of the people that responded. My very naive assumption is that it's likely to be. And I wonder if maybe we need to look at that. And again, the Christmas, the fact that the leave over Christmas is so important to people, whether or not that reflects a lack of diversity in the ethnicity of the council, because it tends obviously to relate to one specific area of our community. Do you want me to shut up for a while somebody else comes in? I don't know how many other points.
I was going to suggest that, not that you shut up, but that we dealt with those issues at this point and then come back to any others that you may have.
There are, yeah.
Okay. At this point, I will say that I think it's not appropriate for officers to respond to your first point about the impact of the statement by the leader of the council. So,
if I may, with Chair, disagree with that, or at least raise my point.
Sorry,
around.
if you'd let me finish. So I will be dealing with that myself,
okay.
And I'll deal with that right at the end, if that's okay with you.
That's fine, as long as you've got the information as to whether or not people have resigned or been negatively impacted as a result of it.
Yeah. Okay. So I shall leave. I shall leave you to sort out who's going to deal with which of those points.
There is one little point still on the things that were important, and that was that the cycle to work scheme was really not important to our staff. And I just wondered how we feel that fits in with the core strategic objectives of the Green Agenda that we have. Because it's the complete opposite of one of those things that we're looking to promote, and that kind of finishes that bit on page 21.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. I'll endeavour to answer your questions as best I can. Some of your points, though, are more observations, so I will respond to them, but they're not really questions. So thank you for the comments about referencing evidence and closing the brackets. Obviously, we can deal with that. That's absolutely fine. With reference to the percentage of the workforce that took part in the focus groups, it was a relatively small number of people. We do find it quite hard to take officers away from their day jobs and to attend focus groups. We did advertise the focus groups right across the council to all staff, but the numbers that attended were low. I can't remember off the top of my head exact figures, but you know, it's sort of around 30 would probably be my guesstimate at this stage. They were, however, they were broadly across the groups of age ranges of them, and banding. So we had CMT members attend, we had managers attend. We did take the opportunity of getting the benefit questionnaire filled in at all sorts of other places, just going, could you just fill in this while you're here, sort of thing. But they were relatively small numbers. In reference to your question, so you observed pensions. One of the questions you had was about specifically attracting younger people to the workforce. We're very aware of that, and in particular aware of the need to excite younger people around democracy and taking part in local government. So one of the things that we've started to do is participate in local careers fairs. I think we've been to 2 so far, to my recollection.
One recently.
Oh, one recently.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is get our apprentices out there and to start to talk to younger people about what working in local government looks like. What we really want is everybody to decide they want to be planners or environmental health officers. And so we've written a sort of bit of a leaflet attracting people. We're thinking about taking little presents with us to get them to talk to us. So that we're doing that sort of thing. Also within the strategy, one of the deliberate things that we want to do is to look at people in the sort of 30 to 50 age group. So one of the things we really want to do is strengthen our family-friendly offerings because we think that will be attractive to that particular, or could be attractive to that particular age group. So we're looking at all sorts of things. We obviously have our intern scheme that worked very, very well this summer, and we got excellent feedback from the interns that took part. We've also got our graduate trainees, which have worked very, very well for us. And our graduate trainees have tended to go on to stay in local government. We rather take the view that if you can excite someone in local government, you know, even if they go to another council, you've done the whole of the public sector a favour, if that makes sense. So we have got a really active programme of attracting younger people into us. I think the intern programme particularly has impressed me. So we are doing a lot of work there, but there is always work to do. And I think you're right in highlighting that it's a real priority for us. So your next observation was in relation to Christmas. I absolutely take your point about the diversity in our workforce. In fact, our ethnicity does reflect Surrey Heath census data. So in fact, one of the things that we were quite pleased about is that we are reflecting the community that we serve, but still there is more to do. If I'm honest with you, Councillor Wheeler, you will know that in the council, September to December is a very, very busy period. And I think everybody is just really, really pleased about the break. So for me, it's less about the sort of ethnicity question and more about the fact that because everyone's on a break, you don't come back to 600 emails. You genuinely have a break at Christmas, which is why it's one of the many reasons why it's so popular. With the cycle to work thing, I'm taking that more as an observation. It is an accurate observation. There's lots more to do around transport to work and agile working, and I know we'll be working very closely with Cameron and already have in terms of like the electric vehicle scheme.
It may also reflect the age group of our current employees as well. Dare I say it?
Just mention about electric bikes.
Oh, no, you mentioned electric bikes.
So with the electric bikes, obviously they're becoming more and more popular and staff are beginning to look at those. So we increased the level that people could borrow to get a reasonable electric bike. So that is something that staff are beginning to show an interest in as well. Okay.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say congratulations to the officers. It's an excellent report. It sounds like a really great place to work, the council. My question's about AI. It's mentioned a few times about something that's happening in the next 5 years, 10 years. Is there any work going on AI at the moment, and what do you expect it to look like in, say, 5 years' time?
Well, Councillor Wilson, that is an enormous question to answer. We're just starting our exploratory work, and in fact, we're already seeing some AI benefits come out. So when we click onto our Microsoft Edge browser, for instance, it will not only bring up the internet, it also brings up things that we're doing at work, appointments we're seeing, and that sort of thing. So we're already seeing AI work its way into our systems. To some extent, you know, it's something that we really need to think very carefully about. It is a big part of our digital strategy, which we're just finalising, and we are hopefully going to publish in the next few weeks. In terms of what the future looks like, it's really going to be very interesting. And it will depend to a certain extent, not just on what our existing platforms do themselves with their AI, but the decisions we make around performance and how much we invest in AI. You know, the possibilities of, you know, are almost unimaginable, I would suggest. But we will be constricted by how much we invest in our systems, as all public sector organisations are. And I think we will need to make decisions about the amount of investment we put in it. But as I say, we're already seeing it weave its way into our existing platforms.
Thank you. Next page, bottom of page 23, we talk about the desire to work from home. And I just wondered what steps we are taking to identify possible isolation within the workforce, and have we actually analysed the desire to work from home across all age groups? Because again, when you're established at home, you're not living alone, you're not living in isolating accommodation, it's much more attractive. So I just wondered what steps we were taking to ensure that we're dealing with any isolation.
Councillor Wheatley, do you have any other points? Let's have a couple more.
Okay, I'll do a couple more. I don't want to make it too easy. There is a spelling mistake on page 24 with the word emphasising. It's spelt with a Z and not an S. Next one is just an observation, so I will leave it. And then on page 36, so it's quite a big jump, with succession planning, and we are employment marking significant skills shortage. And I just have made a question there to say, is it not possible to develop better cross-council working to increase the opportunity for staff development internally? So I know that we already share roles with some other councils, which would be difficult to make interesting in a council of our size. And I just wondered what exploration was going on to make that more attractive to people. And then on page 39, I'm just checking I'm still in the right policy. I am, aren't I? Yeah. Sorry. On page 39, the social conscious and awareness and the development of emotional intelligence, I've just said, what steps can we take to increase social community input, to increase the buy-in in our residents, and therefore the feeling of satisfaction for our staff. So I know that exercises that I'm aware of that the council undertook, for example, during COVID, which were way over and above services that we had to offer, had such a positive impact on our residents. And my understanding from feedback is that that engagement had very positive engagement for our staff as well, in terms of that feeling of ownership and making a true difference. So I just wondered what exploratory steps we could do to make that better. Okay, page 39. Hang on. Hang on. Let me just get to the thing. It's about applications. Am I still on the right place? A skills wider management team, highly encouraged across all levels of the council. It's not just an observation that Runnymede Borough Council have alternatives to applying online, and also set expectations for the timetable and some indication of their values as a council. And I just wondered if maybe that's something we should consider. I did a comparison of the senior HR advisor for us versus the Runnymede Borough Council corporate head of housing. So it seemed like a sort of a similar level. And others also have contact information for further information before the application, which we don't seem to have on our advertisements. And I just wondered if that was something that maybe we could consider, because it can't help but make us look as a more inviting employer potentially. I'm hoping the next one goes on to the next one. I don't know if it does. I don't know if it does go on to the next policy. Do you want to stop there for a while?
Fine. Please.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Living at home isolation. This is something that we've worked quite hard on. We are very fortunate as a council in that we don't mandate working from home. So anyone who wants to work in the office may work in the office and may also work anywhere in the office. So they can always find people to work with. We do have a number of staff who prefer working in the office, and they come in every day or almost every day, and that is absolutely fine with us. We have worked with our managers to make sure that they are really engaging with their staff. They're pretty practiced at that now, because obviously through the pandemic they absolutely had to. It is something that we're very alive to. We do require our managers to do regular one-to-ones and to ask about well-being as part of that one-to-one process. So we do feel that our staff could reach out if they needed to, and they certainly seem to be quite practiced in that. So I think we feel that is probably something, it always needs work, but it is something that we're looking at. Thank you for the spello. I will definitely change that. One of the things you mentioned, and I got all excited when you mentioned this, was cross-council working. So this is something that we're really trying out at the moment. So today I chaired a cross-council women's group, which was absolutely great. And we're looking at sort of getting mentors from other councils, particularly for managers and senior managers. I have a mentor in another council, and I know it's really benefited me. So we are looking at that. There is always that slight worry bead that if someone goes to another council, that they might like that other council and then may leave and go to that council. But we try to sit on the worry bead and just see the benefits.
Julie, part of that is about having shared roles, so that the roles, because we've spoken and you spoke in your introduction about the fact that people are recruited and they move on to bigger and better things, because there's not necessarily the scope within Surrey Heath. But if we're having shared roles, the scope is that much bigger and therefore maybe more appealing to somebody, rather than necessarily the sort of the sharing and the mentoring, which I absolutely agree is brilliant. But it's about finding ways to make our roles bigger so that we don't lose the talent.
Yes, it's certainly something worth exploring. And of course would have cost benefits potentially as well. So something definitely worth exploring. With regards to your social and community input, that is such a good point. You're absolutely right that during COVID, the staff absolutely loved getting involved in things they didn't usually get involved in, and they also loved that feeling of really supporting the community. I think there's a lot more that we could do here. One of the things that we're looking at is we have all our staff are entitled to a volunteering day every year, and one of the things we're thinking of doing, or we are doing, and we're not thinking of doing it, is running a volunteering campaign to encourage staff to take that up and to do it within the local community, because we think that will be, that will really encourage that feeling again.
Can I just make an appeal for those of us that are here to go back to your relative group leaders and see if within your own communities you can come up with something that we could maybe liaise with you about, Sally, in our own communities that we feel would be mutually beneficial, both from a staff satisfaction and from a community point of view. Is that something you'd welcome?
Very much so. We're always looking for volunteering opportunities, so that would be absolutely great. And then your last point about advertising, we do have contact information on our advertisements, generally speaking, and I get wrong a lot anyway. And we also have introduced packs that are admittedly for higher roles generally, so manager roles, but we have introduced packs that we have worked very, very well, and we are expanding all the time.
There is a standard pack that's on there as well. So there's a standard pack that's on there. And then sometimes when it's a more difficult to recruit post, then it becomes a bit more individualised. But yeah, there is a standard pack on there.
I think, as I said, I said the two jobs that I looked at and the different ways of approaching it. And one of the things that certainly Runnymede were doing is that they did have alternative ways to apply other than online. Now, I appreciate that we need digital literacy within our workforce, but developing digital literacy may well be a skill that we have in-house. And I just wonder if maybe we could explore that a little bit. As I said, I'm quite happy to send you through the links or the bits that I've mentioned. Then, okay, we'll do.
That concludes your points, Councillor Wheeler?
No, it doesn't.
Can I ask you to be brief? We've spent over half an hour on this up to now, so if you could be as swift as possible, that would be good. Thank you.
I will not stick to any points that don't require a direct answer, and if I may, Sally, I'll liaise with you separately. I have to say I'm surprised there aren't more comments from the rest of the committee or more observations or questions. Okay, I think the next one actually goes on to the next policy. So if you want to introduce that first, let me just check. I think it is, isn't it? So political, economic, social, technical and environmental analysis, I think it relates to that. So is there another introduction for that, or do you want me just to go on?
That's the annex.
Oh, sorry, transactional administration will be entirely delivered through technology within the period of this strategy. I'd just like to question that a little bit on the basis that my understanding is that we have a statutory requirement to provide services, access to services that don't require technology. So that seems slightly at conflict with that statement, because I think it's a government requirement, isn't it, that access isn't via technology. So you'll be pleased there's not that many more after this, but if you want to come back on that one. And then the other one is the reference to tourism, which is obviously particularly low in this borough, as we don't have any destinations. So I'm surprised to see that sort of pulled out specifically within this report. So I don't know. I've got some other things on the next one, but I don't know if you want to just come back on those two and then I'll shut up.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Councillor Wheeler. So the two things I would say, the introduction of AI, I think that is introduced in the sort of technological side. You are absolutely right. That statement is a broader statement around how people work generally within the UK as opposed to specifically around how people work in local government, if that makes sense. But I can clarify that. I can maybe do a little bit of clarifying just to make that point so that it's clearer. If that would be helpful to you, I'm very happy to do that. Okay, will do, no problem. The other point about the increase in UK tourism, I appreciate tourism isn't an enormous part of our economy at the moment. I think we all feel, though, that Surrey Heath is a very beautiful destination and could be.
We've got some minutes and other meetings that relate to it, so maybe I'll come back to you separately on that.
Thank you. Councillor Thorne.
Thank you, Chair. I apologise, I am going to jump back slightly to page 16, if that's all right, just where we talk about culture within, obviously, the council. My question really comes around to, a survey was conducted. Do we know when that survey was conducted? Because I'm just thinking over the last 4 or 5 months, there's been quite a lot of change within the council, whether that's a new administration, but obviously had different leaders. And within that, the climate and culture in any organisation will naturally change, whether that's be through, you could say, the stages of team development. And I am conscious that within the last 4 weeks, we have kind of very much hit that storming stage, but almost like a nuclear bomb, which wasn't particularly helped, I don't think, by the leader's unofficial financial statement, which was made to the press. And my question really lies with this. Would it be appropriate for us to be reconducting a new survey to the staff looking at the culture if this survey was conducted before the change of administration, purely on the basis that with everything that's happened, a lot of those results could be quite different? Thank you.
I'll take your question in 2 parts, Councillor Thorne, if I may. The first part is to confirm that, yes, the survey was done around the time of the election. I can't remember the exact dates, but I can remember it was sort of April, May time. It was late spring. So you are right that the results reflect that particular period in time, although we do see clear trends and patterns from the year before. With reference to the second part of your question, which is, would it be appropriate to survey the staff again? In my view, no. And the reason for that is because we haven't done what we need to do with the data we collected the first time. And there's nothing so demoralising to staff to collect a lot of data, and it was a lot of data, and then not to act on their comments within it. So we need a reasonable period of time to action the things they did suggest we changed and the things we did. We've got an action plan. We are committed to that action plan. So the soonest we would resurvey them is sort of spring next year. Yes, that's the soonest we would resurvey them because we need time to do what we said we would do.
Okay. Councillor McIntyre.
Just to follow up slightly on that one in terms of resurveying and when the appropriate time is, in one of the organisations I've worked recently, we had a sort of always-on tool, and I don't know whether that's something we might want to look at, which surveys sort of on a continuous basis. I know that sounds like it's a lot of work, but it's quite a good touch point to sort of see where things are going. So I'll share that with you just to see if that's any use. My question actually was more around leavers, and there's a lot of work obviously about retaining talent and getting the right people in. But in terms of the people that do leave, do we know and do you have the insight as to where they go, why, and conduct exit interviews to be able to form a picture of what we need to do?
So we do exit interviews. They're not compulsory because we don't want to make it compulsory, but we do it in 2 formats. They can either complete it as a form or they could actually have a face-to-face interview with us. So either way, we're more than happy, and that's always in their leavers letter to contact us and arrange that. We have a mixed response to that, but yes, we do have an exit. And yes, we're in the process of actually anonymising, but trying to collect information so that we can feed back to CMT on that very point.
So do we find that people tend to stay within public sector and go to other councils, or do they tend to move into private or other industries?
Yeah, I would say it's a bit mixed. It kind of goes through stages for some reason as well. It seems if they're going on to public sector, then all of a sudden we've got a few that are going to private sector for various reasons.
Thank you.
Oh, bless you.
I'm really sorry.
Councillor Gordon.
Just a quick question. I've seen quite a few job offers recently advertised online. It seems more than normal. Are we having more leavers than normal at the moment, or just am I more aware of them? Sorry, there seems to be more adverts for jobs recently from Surrey Heath Borough Council online. So I'm not sure we're having more leavers than normal, but there seems to be a more increased presence of job adverts online. So I don't know if we're having more vacancies or we're recruiting or increasing our team numbers. I was just curious.
Yes, sorry. Very good question. Sorry, I hope I'm okay just responding. Thank you. So we have had quite a few leavers, but we've also had opportunities that have come along. So, you know, we've got some temporary roles, for example, and there's a few permanent roles where we've got external funding that we're able to produce. So I can't say it's all because of leavers. It is very much a mixture. But yes, we are concerned about our retention.
Okay, I'm keen to bring this to a close. It's we've spent a lot of time on it. Does anybody online have any issues before we finally do that? Sorry. No, that's no problem. Fine, good. So before we do close, we'll go back now to Councillor Weir's original point, which was the impact of the Leader of the Council's statement about the financial position.
Sorry, Chair, just before you do, we're not closing the meeting, are we? We're just closing that item, yeah? Because we've...
Yes, we're just closing that item. It's very early days to form any definite conclusions after the Leader's statement, but one of the things that I've done as Chair of the Employment Committee is to take some fairly extensive soundings, if you like, amongst the staff and amongst the HR department. And so anecdotally, it has to be accepted, I think, that it would appear that numbers of applications for vacancies have reduced. Not so many people are applying. And in fact, I understand that a successful applicant withdrew their acceptance of a job shortly after the statement was made. Whether there is a direct link with that, we can't say, but that did happen. And it is also true that managers are expressing concerns about staff retention because they have had, understandably, questions from staff regarding job security, and that inevitably has some sort of impact on staff morale. Having made those points, I think it's fair to say that the administration is confident that a revised financial plan will be produced and that will mitigate the poor financial position. It should be borne in mind that the bankruptcy comment was made in the context of there being little or no action being taken to reduce costs, make savings and to increase income. The executive and officers are working hard on next year's budget to achieve all three of those things. I don't want to be the council's old buffer too much. I understand I'm already in that position. But I originally joined the council in 1991. And it's true to say that in every year of the subsequent 20 years in which I was on the council at that time, there was some sort of financial crisis. I don't suggest that, that those are the same as the ones we have today. Clearly, the reserve position has deteriorated significantly compared to all those years ago. But we remain confident that solutions to the problems will be found. And some of them will be difficult and painful. But in particular, I want to assure our officer colleagues that the administration and senior officer team will only consider impacting staff levels as an absolute last resort. I obviously can't give a firm undertaking in that regard, and I think the staff are sensible enough and mature enough to understand that. And finally, a word about the staff. Back in the 1990s, I think it's true to say that there were probably too many staff at the council. although I suppose to be fair, the range of statutory services at that time was wider than it is now. And there was a sense amongst councillors at that time that many of the staff were not, shall we say, particularly stretched. On rejoining the council in May this year, I've been incredibly impressed by first of all, the reduction in staff which has taken place compared to all those years ago, but more particularly by the huge level of professionalism and commitment shown by the people who work here at Surrey Heath at all levels of the organisation. It's been the single largest change I've observed in 2023 compared to my earlier years at the council. In the first 5 months of the new administration, I've heard no other councillor, and that's irrespective of party, offer any criticism of our corps of officers, in fact quite the contrary. As councillors, it's to our huge advantage that we have some 250 very high quality officers, and in my role as chair of the Employment Committee, I want to thank every one of them for their efforts, expertise and the level of customer service that they offer our residents. We look forward to carrying on working with every one of them throughout the whole life of this council, and some of us would hope, beyond the life of this council. So that is my response to your question, Councillor Wheeler. If you have any supplementary points, I'll try and deal with them.
Thank you, Chair. I believe my question was, were we aware of anybody that had actually resigned as a direct result of the leader's recent announcement on the financial position of the council?
I am not aware of that. Are we specifically aware of any of that?
As far as I'm aware, no one has said that they have resigned directly as a result of the leader's statement. There have been resignations since the leader's statement, but no one has said that specifically.
Anybody got any other points about that? Good, because we spent far too much time on this item, and we're now going to, so much time that my screen has gone blank. So we're now going to just take the resolution on that item, which is that the people strategy be adopted. Are we all agreed on that? Thank you. And I'd like to thank the staff, in particular Sally and her team, for the work they put in on that. Capability policy and procedure is the next item. Hopefully we can deal with this a little quicker than the last one, but who knows? I leave it again to you to please present this item to the committee.
With pleasure, and apologies for coughing earlier. So the capability policy is one of our most important policies that we have as a council. It assesses or supports managers and staff through assessing whether staff are able to do their roles in accordance with their job descriptions. So that effectively is what capability is. Can the member of staff do the role in accordance with the job description? Capability, as you all are aware, is one of the reasons for dismissal. So if you cannot reach the terms of your job description, so it is an incredibly important policy to us as employers and to the staff to be fairly and properly treated with respect through the process. This policy has come to you not because there has been any legislative change, but as part of our business as usual review of policies. We had a look at this particular policy, and one of the things that we really wanted to do, it was an incredibly long process. It's a staged process, and it should be a staged process because at each stage we give the employee the opportunity to improve, and that's an important part of what we do. But one of the changes we did want to make is the ability to bring an employee in at a slightly higher stage if their capability issues had been reputationally damaging to the council or high risk. And so for that reason, we've changed the policy to enable managers to bring it in at a higher stage in certain circumstances. And you will see that we've given examples of those circumstances in the policy. That's probably the most major change to this particular policy, but as I say, it is worthy of, it is a really important policy for us, so we would appreciate your feedback and your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And it's worth noting, and I should have made this point about the first item, but forgot, that both the people policy and this policy have been discussed by the Joint Staff Group and subject to one or 2 points agreed. So on that point, on that note, does anybody have any questions, comments, queries that they want to make? Okay, anybody online? I'll come to you in a moment, Councillor Wheeler. No? Good. Okay, Councillor Wilson.
Just a quick comment. I think looking at the policy that my employer uses, it has a similar sort of escalation, you know, in certain extreme circumstances. It sounds like a reasonable change to me. So,
Thank you for that. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. Page 51, I've just got a comment that do we need a comma here, or does it refer to the health of their knowledge? Should be health, comma, or knowledge. So we say, let me get it to go down. This is assessed by their ability, aptitude, behaviours, competence, knowledge, health and skills. I'm assuming it should be knowledge, comma, health and skills. Yeah. Also talking on the same point where we're talking about right from the start the assessment of capabilities made during the recruitment process. I know we'll refer later on to somebody's job description, but I wonder if we should incorporate in here that it should be related back to their job description, and a reference to that should be made in that point. And then we talk about managers to raise any concern on an employer's performance, and I've just got a little point there. I have to say, reading this policy, although it's an improvement on how it was before, there are parts of it that seem to come across as a one-way appraisal system as opposed to a 360-degree appraisal system. And if somebody is failing, part of it might be down to their responsibility or their lack of knowledge or their unwillingness or whatever, but part of that might be our own failure to give them the skills and the experience and the training that is required. It just said line managers will raise any concerns, and I just said there feedback on performance will be shared, would possibly be, yeah, please do.
I should say this isn't an appraisal process.
No.
This is a process for when things are going wrong. So although there is a discussion,
Yeah.
it isn't an appraisal process where you have that feedback loop of, you know, how are things going? Obviously training is a part of it. And if someone felt that they lacked training, we would expect them to make the point. But this isn't that sort of collaborative appraisal process. It's a process for when things are failing. Yeah.
I take that on board. It's unusual for me to be too soft and woolly, isn't it? And then if we just go on, you'll be pleased to know there really aren't very many on this. Is at the bottom of page 53 on our notes, where we say ensure that employers are given the necessary training, support and instruction to effectively carry out their roles. I wondered there, one of the bit that's missing from there is that we don't talk about ownership, decision making and managing responsibilities. And I just wondered if we should add that in there, and also making employees more aware of additional training and support options in there, if at all possible, because we talk about it elsewhere, but we don't kind of talk about it there. Are you keeping up as to where they are? Sorry. And it's a really small point. on 9.1.3, the employee will be asked to explain possible reasons for their underperformance. And I just wondered there, and as I said, it's unusual for me to be soft, whether we could use the term discuss possible reasons for their underperformance, because explaining is, the phrase explain is so accusatory that it may not encourage participation. Almost there. Just to comment, the employer that, which point are we on? Hang on, sorry, 9.1.4. And it says the employee has met the required improvement in the performance of the management requirement to performance of this performance, blah, blah, blah. And I've just put a point in there. Is there anything about that we can enhance there around the shared responsibility? And we've got nothing there that allows, or I can't see it, that allows the employee to express it if they feel that those points that are being made are not correct. So is there a different policy that covers that if the disciplinary process feels to be unjust at this stage? Because what we're trying to do, isn't it, is to preempt having to go through a more formal disciplinary process. But I just wondered where it's expressed that if somebody is going through this process and they feel that the manager is not fair or correct in their interpretation of their performance, do they have to wait to the next stage when they can bring somebody in with them? Or is there anything here whereby we can tell them what to do if they don't feel it's fair at this stage? Does that make sense?
I just want to make a couple of points. Firstly, this policy and the disciplinary policy are entirely separate. So capability talks about performance, disciplinary talks about conduct. But I absolutely accept your point that at the informal stage, we're trying to be preventative and stop it go to formal, and make it clear to the employee what standards are required. I think your point about discuss rather than explain is a good one, and I definitely would take that on board. The employee does always have the option of going to our staff representatives at any time throughout this process, or indeed at any time, whether they're in a process or not. And of course, they do have a formal process, or indeed an informal process, of raising a grievance if they feel that they're being unfairly treated. So there is a mechanism for them to say if they are being unfairly treated at any stage or for any reason, because we do have a grievance policy.
I just wonder from the point of view of comfort if there could be any reference that, because it reads in quite a one way, that it is a one-way process. Okay, that's fine. And then one more point after this one, you'll all be relieved to know. That there's the expected standards of performance and why the manager feels these have not been met. This is on page 11 of 17 or page 59 in our papers. And I just wonder if this should be where rather than why. So it's where and where the manager feels these have not been met as to why the manager feels they've not been met. Because part of this process is discovering the why. Yeah, just a very slight variance on the meeting. And then my very last point is the references to letters throughout, so what the letters should include. And I wonder if maybe that would be better expressed as correspondence, because I'm assuming that sometimes that information, or maybe it doesn't, goes by email. Or is it always in a letter?
It might go attached to an email, or as a link, but it would always be in the form of a letter.
I wonder if to future-proof it, correspondence might be a more inclusive term, or does it, from a legal point of view, always have to be a letter? Okay, that's absolutely fine then. Thank you.
Perhaps I could just make two brief points. First of all, by definition, a capability policy is inevitably driven by the employer. No employee is ever going to admit unprompted that they're not capable. So it has to be driven, as it were, by the by the employer. And I'd also make the point that clearly this is a very delicate issue as far as staff are concerned, obviously, and quite naturally. But the staff representatives have been consulted widely on this and have agreed the policy as stated. Does anybody have any other points they wish to make? Fine. So once again, we are asked to note and adopt the revised capability policy and procedure. Are we all agreed on that?
Can I just say there were a couple of amendments in there that I think were agreed, so can we say subject to amendments?
Okay, as amended. Fine. We will now move on to organisational change policy and procedure. And once again, this is a fairly delicate matter and has been reviewed by the Joint Staff Consultative Group in September. And there were one or two revisions suggested, which I believe have been incorporated into the policy. So would you like to introduce that item, please?
With pleasure, thank you, Chair. Again, this is one of a very important policy to us. There's a certain amount of legal risk, as I'm sure you'll all be aware, in relation to organisational change. We have to follow the ACAS process. We have a duty to consult. This is an existing policy. It's just come up for review. What we found with our existing organisational change policy is we didn't feel that we quite made the rights of the employee clear enough. So, as I say, no legislative change, but we just wanted to support the staff a bit more so that the policy was a little bit easier to follow. So the key changes are we've introduced greater clarity around rights for employees. We also wanted to clarify the way we calculate redundancy payments. So those are the sort of two major changes. You can see the track changes throughout. But yes, that's essentially what this policy review is in essence. Thanks very much. Appreciate your feedback.
Thank you for that. For those of you watching online, I was engaged in getting some more water, which explains the gap. Right, anybody got any questions or comments on the organisational change policy and procedure? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Just a small comment about page 81 on ways to avoid dismissals. I've worked at an organisation which had to go through a lot of these sort of options that you've put there. They did have one other option, and it goes back to what you were saying about when we recruit and people develop and move on, we're actually helping the public sector because we're not really competing with other public sector organisations. Did you consider having secondments of staff that might be at risk to other public sector organisations? That way, we could keep them, back in have them back in a couple of years, because, as you've said, it's so difficult to recruit skilled officers.
So thank you, Councillor Wilson. We've had a little debate about that, as you just heard. Secondments generally across the public sector are a really good idea. We are so supportive of secondments. They're something that we as an organisation, I know particularly the Chief Executive, wants to encourage both externally and internally particularly. I don't think I've ever used a secondment to avoid a redundancy situation, but it's certainly something I would be interested in looking at and understanding further. Mr Simmons was just saying that we had a secondment in to avoid a redundancy, but we've never seconded out to avoid redundancy. Something I'd certainly be interested in. Whether we want to put it in the policy just yet, I'd want to do a little bit of work around it first to establish what that looked like. I don't know if you could possibly send me any links or any information about it. I'll certainly do a bit of research myself. That would be very useful.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll send you details of how it worked in the organisation I was in. Thank you.
Good. Any further comments? Okay. I'll take that as a no. Good. So we're asked once again to resolve that the organisational change of policy and procedure be adopted. Are we all agreed? Thank you. And on to a very important policy now, the mental health policy. Once again, this has been discussed and approved without any changes by the Joint Staff Consultative Group at their meeting in September. Would you like to introduce it, please?
Thank you, Chair. So yes, I think we've heard earlier how important mental health is to us as an organisation, how expensive it is, and to our employees. You know, you'll be well aware of the fact that 1 in 4 people encounter a mental health episode at some point in their working lives. What I was interested to know when I went to some mental health training not very long ago is just how influential work is in people's mental health, both in a positive way because it gives you purpose and it gives you meaning and it gives you structure to your day, but also in the possibility of, you know, stress and excessive demands and that sort of thing. So work is really impactful on people's mental health. When we get it right, we really get it right, and when we get it wrong, it tends to go horribly wrong. So we want to get it right as an employer. We think this is incredibly important. The mental health policy is a step in the journey. It's not the only step in the journey. We have introduced mental health training for managers, and they're all attending that at the moment, provided by an external trainer. It's been very good to help managers recognise and support and you know, intervene at an early stage where they see staff encountering difficulties. And that seems to be working well, but we are at the beginning of that journey. You know, mental health has been taboo for a very, very long time. And so, you know, culturally, we're trying to change that. One of the things that we've done, or we're in the process of doing, I should say, that's a bit more accurate, is signing up to the Mental Health at Work commitment, which is built on the Thriving at Work principles that I think were published back in 2017, 2018. And that commitment shows us as an employer the importance that we stand by in terms of mental health. We have mental health first aiders. We meet very regularly. Julie and I chair that meeting between us. And the mental health first aiders are very keen at making sure that that commitment is rolled out across the organisation. It was Mental Health Awareness Day this week. We've been encouraging our staff to take mental health breaks, and we've been enormously encouraged to see that they are beginning to do that. So there is a sort of sea change, and this policy is just, as I say, a step on that journey of sea change. It is a new policy to us. We've not had that before, so would particularly welcome your thoughts, and this will be something I suspect we will talk about on an ongoing basis pretty regularly. Thanks very much.
Thank you for that. And before anybody else mentions it, there is a typo in the first line, which we have already spotted. Fine, thank you. Anybody have any comments? Councillor Gordon.
Just one quick point. I've been doing mental health sessions in the pub now for about 2 years now. And one thing we've realised, a lot of people will avoid going to their own work internal mechanisms for fear of repercussions. So I think it's quite good to signpost people to other things like the men's shed, men's club, or whatever it is you're doing. But look in the borough for other things you can signpost people to. People might be afraid to come to the internal processes. And we've learned that quite a lot throughout the sessions. So.
Councillor Gordon, I think that's such a good point. And one of the things that we have developed is a space on our internal intranet that points people towards not just internal resources, but lots and lots of external resources. One of the points you make that is so good, though, is those local resources. I think it would be really helpful to remember those and to be pushing out information on those. So I'll definitely take that away. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Rise.
Thank you, Chair. Within my portfolio, I have health and wellbeing responsibilities, so I just want to voice my support for this policy and encourage the committee to support this. As Mrs. Kipping has already highlighted, kind of having a strengthened mental health policy is incredibly important for us as a corporate employer. It helps build a resilient workforce, and we've already kind of been discussing the workforce and the anxieties and stresses that our staff may have. So I think having this in place is really important. And I was discussing this with Mrs. Simmons and Mrs. Kippings earlier this week. And I just want to kind of add my support to the great work our officers do and thank the officers for putting this report together. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. I find it absolutely horrific that we didn't have one before. It's really quite scary. So thank you for making sure that we have one now. Just a general point that we do some things, I think, well within our organisation to help our staff's well-being. Some of that is physical, so the fact that there is so much natural light in the building and that sort of thing. And I wonder if maybe we should have whether or not it's possible to have a positive statement in there about some of the things that we do that we know are good practice. Because although at the moment we're in a beautifully lit building, that may not always be the case, and it may not always, be where. So some of those positive things, the things like the fact that we give a volunteering day, which we know is really good for people's mental health. So I just wonder if we could have a statement at the start that highlights some of those things that we know that we are already doing well. I acknowledge the spelling mistake on the first page. There's a couple of others as well. So early active engagement, manage the rescue team to monitor, there's an R missing, and then the spelling of actively is also adrift. It's page 109 on ours, but it's page 3 of 9. And there's some odd bullet points and numbering and things. I don't know if it's just where you've got track changes in there, and that's. But if you could just look at that, there's some odd bits there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else got any? Councillor McIntyre. You can go first.
You mentioned obviously earlier that it's a taboo subject, or has been historically a taboo subject, and there's obviously more and more to be done. Do we track any MI around mental health? And I know that's sort of a difficult topic because not everyone wants to talk about it, but just in terms of being able to recognise it and how much support we're providing or how much more is needed.
So we do track, we have an analytics function on our iTrent, which is our people system, and we can track cost, conditions, we can track individuals, we can track the length of their absence and that sort of thing. The thing that we can't track at the moment is the impact of mental health where people are still working, if that makes sense. So we don't collect data around that at the moment, other than anecdotal and what staff reps bring to us, what we observe ourselves as HR practitioners. There is a requirement in the mental health at work commitment to improve reporting on mental health. So it's definitely something that we will need to look into and consider about how we report. But yes, at the moment, it's just that very sort of stark, it costs this, and we've lost these many days.
My apologies, Councillor Thorne.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a small question. I note obviously there's a host of e-learning resources available through the online learning portals. Is there any thoughts of doing any face-to-face learning, maybe that blended approach, the one thing I've got in my mind at the moment is in past jobs we've done various psychometric work with teams where we've done DISC or various other tests, which allows the team really to understand the people who they work with, and also the managers to better understand their team, whether that's looking out for micro behaviours or various other things, which sometimes for people suffering with mental health, if the team better understands the person that way, it may be easy for them to spot those issues before it can kind of accelerate.
So we have done quite a number of face-to-face events. So the mental health training for managers was a face-to-face in-person event. And in that we talked a lot about how to recognise signs and behaviours of people experiencing a mental health episode. We know peer support is incredibly important, and Sarah Bainbridge, our Organisational Development Manager, runs team days to encourage that team bonding and that sort of team work together. And the other thing that we have done is that we've done some time to talks where we literally just all come together, talk about a particular topic. So we did one on anxiety and depression. We've done one on supporting each other and recognising when someone's feeling a bit overwhelmed and that sort of thing. So we do have a few things in place, and we also have our mental health first aiders, and their information is all online, so anyone can contact them, and that contact would obviously be face to face. When I say face to face, it could be virtual via Teams rather than actually physically face to face. So there are a number of things that we do, and that rather comes back to Councillor Wheeler's question about managing isolation. One of the things that I think the pandemic has really done for us as a sort of nation, not just as an employer, is that recognition that firstly people do feel overwhelmed, and secondly to recognise those signs when someone is, because we have all seen people become overwhelmed. You know, we've all experienced that. Either we've experienced being overwhelmed ourselves, or we've experienced seeing someone else overwhelmed. So I think we are getting better at that, and less likely to ignore it, you know, less likely to just carry on going, why is that person behaving oddly, but to stop and say, are you okay? Are you really okay? You know, there was a campaign about a year ago about asking if you're fine twice, and I think we've really taken that on board. And you know, we do try and do that with each other. I do think managers are becoming better and better and better at that, because they themselves have experienced it. You know, they themselves have experienced needing someone to intervene with them. So yes, I would say broadly we are getting better at that. I don't think it's ever anything we can be complacent about. And you know, if councillors ever have any thoughts about things that they've experienced in their own workplaces that have really worked for them, if they let me know, I would steal with pride.
Thank you for that, and thank you for that point. It's a very good one. Any other points that anybody wishes to add at this point? No, fine. So once again, we're asked to resolve that the mental health policy be adopted. Can we do that? Good. Okay. Thank you. We've been presented with quite a lot reports to read through and absorb. We come to the last one, thankfully, for the evening, which is the flexible working policy and procedure. As you will have noted, it's a very detailed document aimed at ensuring that people are comfortable in their work, but I'm not going to bang on. Please, over to the professionals. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Saving the best till last, I always say. Flexible working is a bit of a showcase piece for us in that it is a really key part of our attraction and retention strategy. Our staff really value their flexible working. We regularly test this in our staff surveys, and the staff survey this year came back with such strong support for flexibility in the workplace. We know that it's particularly attractive to younger members of staff as well as family members of staff or members of staff with caring responsibilities. So it really is one of those policies that is attractive right across the whole of the workforce. There have been some legislative changes to this one which prompted our review. You can now, from a statutory request perspective, you can make 2 requests per year. It used to be 1. And there's also a process time limit of 2 months that we have to respond to requests. We took the opportunity when making the legislative changes also to introduce flexible working as a day one, flexible working requests, I should say, as a day one right. So people can now apply to us for a role, and from the first, they can say, please may I work compressed hours, or please may I work part-time, please may I do a job share, and we will consider that request. That's going to enable us, we feel, to attract more applicants to our roles, and that in turn will play a really important part in that, attracting and retaining talented officers into the council. We do have to be a little bit careful because some roles just don't work very well with flexible working, so we can't say we'll do it for every single role, and we can't say we'll always agree it, but we will certainly look at every role. And yes, so that's where we are with the flexible working policy. Happy to take any comments and feedback.
Thank you for that. Councillor Gordon.
In light of the importance people hold on flexible working, are we going to change our job application adverts to highlight this is a priority first of all? Because I've seen quite a few adverts and it's not really prominent enough there. So I think maybe we could change the focus really.
Councillor Gordon, you're absolutely right. Zurich Insurance do an absolutely brilliant minimum hours thing on their job advertisements, and that's something I would really like to work towards, as you know, if I could. So yes, I think we need to showcase it more. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler.
I've only got one. And that is, we say, we make the reference to please note this may not be available for all roles. I'm assuming the working full-time hours across a 9-day fortnight may also not be applicable for all roles. But very happy to be, because we've expressly pulled out on the others, but we haven't for that.
Apologies, we were just having an offline discussion. Yeah. I was just asking Mrs Simmons if there were any roles we wouldn't consider a 9-day fortnight for.
Only, I can't think that there's any roles we would not consider anybody for, but obviously we have 8 reasons that we can deny an application or refuse an application. So anybody can apply. We don't say no to anybody applying, but there may be service requirements as to why we can't agree to it.
It's just the fact that on the other points, you've got in brackets that please note this may not be available for all roles, but we don't have it specifically. So it's either a statement that we make once at the top that this may not be applicable for all roles, or it means that the 9-day fortnight is definitely applicable for all roles. I'm just thinking maybe about this contact centre, for example. That might not be possible, but it may be possible because of opening time. So it was just, it just was a little bit strange to me that the other points have got it in brackets, but that particular one hasn't. And if it does apply to all of them, I just wonder if it would be better to put in the intro paragraph. That was all. It's a tiny thing.
I think we should probably accept that, Councillor Wheeler. I think that's a good point.
Thank you. Anybody else? Good. Okay, once again, I should have made the point that this has been discussed by joint staff who had no recommended changes to the policy. So we're once again, finally, for the last time tonight, asked to resolve that the revised flexible working policy and procedure be adopted. Are we agreed on that? As amended. Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. The final item is the work programme, and I draw your attention to the fact that, of course, there is a supplementary paper on this, which replaces the originally circulated programme. Would you like to just make any comments on that, please?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Chair. So you'll see that there's an extraordinary meeting on the 16th of November to discuss the pay negotiations for this year that we've currently just started talking to our staff reps about. And then you can follow the programme, rather full programme, on the 1st of February. Although most of the policies are review, the big policy there will be the carers policy, which we're very much looking forward to presenting to you. And then in March, you'll see that there are a few items there. We're anticipating that we probably will bring some more items potentially in March. The pay settlement, you'll notice, is mentioned several times, and that is to allow some flex there should we be unable to reach agreement. I don't know whether you want to comment any more, Mr. Simmons?
I just don't know if the 16th of November is an agreement.
I'll just let members and I'll just make members aware at this point that one or two people did come back as to the appropriateness of the 16th as a date, but I haven't got any news on that at this point.
Councillor Wheeler.
Sorry, I'm just a little bit concerned. We've got the extraordinary. We seem to have lost the 23rd of November. We seem to have moved the 11th of January to the 1st of February and the 7th of March to the 28th of March. Am I reading that correctly? Because we've got a changed work programme.
Yep.
So you were saying that you were looking forward to bringing back the Agile, the Agile working policy. But I just wondered where we've got the speak up policy now, or are those coming to the extraordinary meeting?
Okay. The extraordinary meeting's just around pay negotiations.
So we seem to have lost a meeting. We seem to have lost the 23rd of November meeting, which was there. And we've just got the one in, as I said, the one in January seems to be moved to February, and the one on the 7th of March seems to have moved to the 28th of March, but we seem to have lost the 23rd of November.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here, and the reason for that sort of confusion, I think, is simply because the wrong work programme was attached. I think you'll notice that those wrong dates are in fact the joint staff consultative group dates. Yeah.
Okay, does anybody have any comments on the work programme, apart from me? But I'll come to that in a moment. Okay, good. Two very brief points, if I might. First of all, I think one of the things that should be noted about this evening is that, as I said earlier, we have had a number of pretty complex and potentially quite controversial policies presented, and I think it's worth noting that that it's a tribute to the relationships between the HR function and the staff representatives and indeed members on the Joint Staff Consultative Committee, that these matters are virtually always amicably amicably discussed and agreed, and I think that stands in quite stark contrast to some of the events which are going on nationally and have been going on nationally for months and even years in some cases. So I think it's worth making a note of that. The second point I would make is that, as you will have heard, some of the items coming up in the future programme are quite complex. And if possible, I'd ask you to submit any observations or comments or questions that you might have in advance wherever possible. I know it's not always possible because everybody's very, very busy and under pressure, but if it is possible to do that, it makes life a little bit easier. And on that note, I close the meeting and thank you for your attendance.